In Jujutsu Kaisen chapter 115, we get an introduction to perhaps the most mysterious power in the series. At the end of Sukuna vs. Jogo, the King of Curses mentions that he should fight Jogo using his own specialty. That's when he says open and then some other words that are filled by a black box. Since this point in time, fans have been speculating on what this power actually stems from and whether Sukuna will use it in his fight against the Jujutsu sorcerers. So just to preface this, the black box that is shown in the chapter is Gege purposefully censoring what Sukuna is saying, possibly indicating to us that if we hear his exact words, it'll give away what he's doing. In chapter 230 of JJK, Kusakabe specifically refers to the part of the brain that stores a curse technique as a black box, basically saying that he doesn't really know the intricacies of the brain that can control curse techniques. And to add on to this, Shoko also mentions that there's an obvious connection between one's curse technique and their brains, but even she isn't familiar with how this exactly works. From what we know of Sukuna, we can assume that he knows a lot about the nature of curse techniques than many, if not all, of the modern day sorcerers. And to make things even more interesting, Gege also mentions that in his author notes for chapter 229 that the brain of a cursed spirit and the brain of your everyday sorcerer are much different from one another. So this is really interesting because when Sukuna first unveils this technique in front of Jogo, he specifically says, "I guess a cursed spirit wouldn't know about this." And based on this information that we've been hinted to throughout the story, we can only speculate that sorcerers have the ability to innately control curse techniques due to the composition of their brains being different than curses. This makes a lot of sense considering where cursed spirits actually come from. You see, cursed spirits stem from negative emotions and the subconscious fears of humanity. Jogo, Hanami, and Dagon all were born from the fear of fire-related disasters, land-based disasters, and water-based disasters respectively. And Mahito was born from the fear of each other being humanity. So it would make a lot of sense that a curse's ability is automatically locked in right from the moment that they're born. We know that a curse technique is a manifestation of someone's essence, a reflection of what makes them who they are. Since a curse has been created specifically due to one thing, their curse techniques are basically set in stone. But humans, on the other hand, are a little different. Humans are capable of such a broad range of emotions, values, morals, and ideals. They're not simply locked into thinking a certain way or being trapped into a specific path. They're capable of refining their curse technique, and we'll come back to this word in a little bit because it's incredibly important and gives us tons of information on what Sukuna is actually doing. We also know that mindset plays a massive role in the power of characters in Jujutsu Kaisen, and those who are able to change their mindset can massively improve their curse techniques. When Megumi frees himself from his own mind, we see he's able to activate a domain expansion and go from being overpowered to outright beating a special grade cursed spirit. And we also know that the top tiers in the verse like Sukuna and Gojo love fighting against strong opponents and pushing themselves to the utmost in battle, and it's this selfish desire to grow stronger that allows them to achieve the heights in power that they do. So based on this, we know that there's a high potential for how curse techniques can be applied with the right application of mindset. But that begs the question, what does Sukuna know about this that the modern day sorcerers don't? Well, first we know that Sukuna is easily bored by simple and basic curse techniques since he knows the higher end of their limits, or at least we can assume so. This is why I constantly think he's calling Yuji boring since he can't really do anything extraordinary in his eyes. From Sukuna's perspective, Yuji hasn't tapped into his brain enough to extract the limits of what he can do, and this is massively irritating to him. But if we want to tie this back to Sukuna, it's a really common theory in the community that his curse technique is all centered around cooking. But the more I think about it, the less I think this is actually the case. Some people believe that Sukuna can consume others and steal their curse techniques, but I think the evidence we're shown throughout the series refutes this. Take the instance with Hanakurusu, for example. When he goes to take a bite out of her, if his ability was to steal the curse techniques of others, then he could have simply devoured her right then and there. And in the recent chapters of Jujutsu Kaisen, we learn that cleave and dismantle are in fact Sukuna's base curse techniques, so this is something he's always had from the very beginning. So then you may be asking, what do I think Sukuna's black box ability actually does? Well, this goes back to the word fuga, meaning refinement in Japanese. Alonzi talks about this a lot in his theory video on the black box, so I'd highly recommend checking it out. It's an amazing, amazing video. And I ultimately agree with a lot of the points that he says. What I think is happening is Sukuna is actually matching the cursed energy traits of others by refining his own. I want to emphasize that this is most likely much different than Yuta's copy ability since he's using his own cursed energy and determining a way to make it his. instead of copying how the original user utilizes it. And this would make a lot of sense since you would have the ability to copy elemental abilities like Jogo's flames, but would need to possess the body of Megumi in order to access inherited abilities like the 10 shadows. But in order to access the abilities of others, I think Sukuna needs to do more than simply see the technique from a physical vantage point. He needs to access their souls as well. Yep, that's right. I think Sukuna has the ability to peer into people's souls, and we've seen this throughout the story. Sukuna being able to infiltrate the souls of others would make a lot of sense since with Jogo and Kashimo, we see he's inside of their spirit worlds at the moment of their death. Sukuna's affinity with the soul is also verified way in the beginning of the series with Yuji's battle against Mahito, since he was able to resist the special grade's idol transfiguration and damage him. Furthermore, this also explains as to how Sukuna was able to transfigure himself potentially into the four-armed, two-mouthed monster we see him as. Because we know from Mahito that when you change the shape of your soul, the body will form around it. So I'm very much in agreement that Sukuna can access the curse techniques of others by entering people's souls, learning the outline of them, and then adapting it to himself, which is incredibly overpowered but makes sense since he's the king of curses after all. And as a side note to this, I think it's really important to keep in mind that Sukuna's tattoos follow whoever he's possessing. Obviously, if they were just regular tattoos, they would be gone well before he was reincarnated into Yuji's body in the beginning of the series. But this leads me to an important part of my theory in that Sukuna's tattoos are imprinted on the soul itself, and more importantly are the curse techniques of other people he's observed and taken. Yeah, that's right. I think that each tattoo Sukuna is rocking indicates a technique that he's acquired from another person's soul. And I think this is foreshadowed because when Urame ominously states that Sukuna isn't going all out in last chapter, we get a panel of Sukuna where his tattoos are specifically highlighted. And we learn in the beginning of the story that Yuji would eventually get Sukuna's curse technique, and I think we're seeing that manifest right now with him being able to directly access the soul of others. But these are just some of my thoughts on the research that I've done, but also would love it if you shared your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much to the members of my channel. Your support is always appreciated. Have a great day, and I'll see you all in the next one. Stay curious, anime fam. Peace.